Well, good morning and welcome again to church. We're so glad that you're with us here at Faith Bible Church. And we are starting a new sermon series today. It's called Jesus Is. And as that video just talked about, Jesus is a lot of things. And in this December time frame, we always think about Jesus a lot. These next 4 weeks, the weeks of Advent leading up to Jesus, we think about the incarnation of Jesus and who is Jesus? That's a good question to ask. Who is Jesus? And so we're going to talk about different ways every week of who Jesus is. But first, before we get into that, I want to do a quick review because we have some awesome things to praise God for this last month. So we just got done with our Big Hearts campaign. And in our Big Hearts campaign, we had 4 different programs that we are partnering with. And I'm really excited to share with you guys what we did and how we did. So first off, the first week we talked about Operation Christmas Child. And our goal was 100 boxes. And we ended up with 115 boxes that are going to 115 kids around the world. It's awesome. They're going to hear the gospel. And then we went on the next week to do a bottle drive with CareNet. And our goal was $1,000. And we raised over $1,700 with that bottle drive for CareNet. Then thirdly, we brought in things for our military, and we did military care packages, and we were able to send out we brought in enough things to send out 12 care packages to our military who are stationed here in Milwaukee. And that was awesome. You guys did really good job with that. There's a ton of stuff that we were able to give them. And then the fourth week, we introduced our partnership with Safe Families. And so we have a lot to be thankful for, and we're really looking forward to how that partnership with Safe Families goes forward. And you can still get involved if you would like to hear more information about that. Come and see me after the service. But we have a lot to be thankful for. In church, I'm proud of you. We have a giving church, and it doesn't just stop there. I wanted to give a little review of this last year and kind of a little from 2020 as well. We, as you know, started that children's project over there, and it's been a long project, but we have completely finished phase 1 and 2 this year, and we've raised over $65,000 for that. And so that's I think that's a huge win for the church, and we're really excited to where that's going to go. And I get to introduce this week we're going to start phase 3, and phase 3 is really exciting. Phase 3 is an indoor playground, and if you see the windows out there, it kind of shows a little picture. That's not really what it's going to look like. It's going to be similar, but think of Chick-fil-A's indoor playground kind of. That's kind of the status that it's going to be. We just finally found a construction company that specializes in indoor playgrounds, and they're going to build it for us. And we were able to get a quote, and we're looking in the next few months to raise up enough money to get that going. And we got a quote. The whole project in itself is going to cost around $45,000, and we're really excited to get it going. We already have enough to start. But we're looking forward to see how God is going to use that, because that is going to be a huge outreach tool for our community. We want people to come in to use that space, people in the neighborhood, moms to come in and have birthday parties there, to use the space where it's a safe place where the kids can have a good time, and we can use that in the community. We're really excited to see how God is going to use that project going forward. So that brings me to something new. If you guys notice, we like to play musical chairs here at Faith Bible Church, and the setting is a little different, and that's just to keep you on your toes so you don't get too comfortable in your one spot. But if you look in front of you, there's a QR code on the chair in front of you. And you can take your phone, and if you point it to that QR code, it'll take you to a page that we don't do a bulletin, we don't do giving, passing the plates, but you can access all that information through this QR code. And so if you want to know more about the church, if you want to get connected, scan that QR code. And if this is your first time here, or maybe the second time here at church, I want you to click that Let's Get Connected button, and if you do that and fill it out, we will send you a Starbucks gift card. And so there's a little incentive there, but we want to know how you heard about us, and we're thankful that you came and spent your Sunday with Faith Bible Church. But there's also all sorts of information on there, and we'll continue to add. So if you ever have questions, just go to that QR code. So we're really excited to see what the future holds for us in 2022. And on the 26th, which is the Sunday after Christmas, we will not be having in-person church. We're going to be having online church only, so you can go visit us on our YouTube channel or Facebook. It'll be there, or our website. and you can watch us online. So if you show up to the building, it will be locked. There will be no one here, and you can have church out in the parking lot, I guess. But so only online church on the 26th, so make sure you make a note of that. But we're gonna jump right into Jesus Is. I'm gonna have a word of prayer, and then we'll get going. God, thank you for Faith Bible Church. Thank you that we have a church who loves you. Thank you that this is a group of people that wants to give to this community, that wants to see us impact lives for the gospel. And I praise you for it. I praise you that you have given us grace, that you have provided for us, that you have shown us favor. I pray that we won't take it for granted. And God, I pray as we look forward towards the next year, as we close out this year, that we can be excited for what you're going to do, for what you have done in our lives. And I pray that as we talk about who you are and how you've changed our lives and how you have befriended the sinners, how you came to die, how you were born of a humble birth in a stable, God, I pray that we can open up our own hearts and see how knowing you can change us. I pray this in your name. Amen. All right, we are going to go through this series called Jesus Is. We're starting with Jesus is your friend. Jesus is your friend. And I was going to show this video. I'm going to tell you to look it up on YouTube, because if we played it on YouTube, we would get copyright strike because we're streaming. But if you want to look it up, I think it's called Jesus is a Friend of Mine or something. But it's this old 70s like Christian band that plays this song, and it's great, and it'll get stuck in your head for the rest of the day. But Jesus is a friend of mine. And I think that's a great statement. Jesus is your friend. Jesus is my friend. And in our minds, sometimes we can be caught having this saying to ourselves, if God can help that person, then God can help anyone. Anyone ever like thought that or even said it? If God can help that person, if God can help them, God can help anyone. You know, we say that in our minds, and if we're honest with ourselves, we can admit that mostly good people, because people who say that, you think that they're good, right? If God can help that person, well, I'm better than that person, so I'm better. I'm a good person. Mostly good people look down on mostly bad people. Mostly good people kind of look down or think that they're better than mostly bad people. So we like to look at notorious evildoers and kind of like look at them as marvels of depravity. You know, an example of just how bad someone can get, man, people can get really evil. Look at that guy. Look what they did. Look how evil some people can get. And we have this badness scale in our mind. This person is way down here in the badness scale. You know, I'm not that. I'm mostly good. So I'm really not even, I'm at the top of the badness scale. So we think those things, and then we load up our 2.2 children into our almost paid off SUV and go off to be contributors to society, right? That's how a lot of us think. And see, I include myself in that category, because when we think of ourselves, when we think of other people, we don't usually think of ourselves as the mostly bad group. We like to think of ourselves as the mostly good group. Well, I'm a mostly good person, and they're mostly bad people. See, this is a problem. This is a problem with our mindset, because the Bible and Jesus and God, they call wrong, wrong. Sin is sin. There's no badness scale in God's eyes. If you're wrong, then you're wrong. It doesn't matter how bad you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're someone who committed sin, it doesn't matter how bad the sin is, you are a sinner. Just one sin, the Bible says if you commit one sin, it's like you're guilty of every sin, the whole law. So we have this in our mindset, this sliding badness scale, and we've created this ideology that someone who does, in our eyes, which is like a big sin, you know, the big sin, like you've killed somebody. Yeah, that's a big sin. See, we think of those people as needing Jesus more than someone who just does medium to small sins. Well, that person, they did big sins, so they need Jesus more than I do, because I just have medium to small size sins. I'm just, you know, maybe lie here and there. And this is a false ideology. Well, obviously different sins have different consequences, right? Different sins have different consequences. That's true. That's just the nature of it, where sometimes some sins will get you landed in jail for life or even the death penalty, and a little white lie isn't going to do that. They have different consequences, but God calls sin no matter the size. And Jesus didn't have a rating system either. And we're going to look at Jesus and how he dealt with sin. But he didn't have a rating system. He was willing to accept and to love anyone. And we see this particularly in the story of someone that we're going to look at today. His name was Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus. And if you ever heard of, when I hear the name Zacchaeus, it always reminds me, I grew up in Sunday school, and it reminds me of the Sunday school song, Zacchaeus was a wee little man. And a wee little man was he, right? He climbed up in the sycamore tree for the Lord he wanted to see. And what a good song. That's a classic. Zacchaeus was a wee little man. I think that might be, like, not right to say. That's not politically correct anymore. I don't know. But we're going to talk about Zacchaeus and his story and how Jesus befriended Zacchaeus. How Jesus he didn't have the badness scale. Jesus didn't have that rating, and how he befriended Zacchaeus. We're going to read in Luke 19, and you can look at the screens if you want to read along. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through. A man was there by the name of Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was wealthy. He wanted to see who Jesus was. But because he was short, he could not see over the crowd. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore fig tree to see him, since Jesus was coming that way. When Jesus reached the spot, he looked up and he said, "Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today." So he came down at once and welcomed him gladly. All the people saw this and began to mutter, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half of my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times that amount." Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost." That is such an awesome story, talking about how Jesus was a friend to sinners. And we need to understand how bad, on the badness scale, Zacchaeus was, right? When people looked at Zacchaeus, how did they view him? See, Zacchaeus, he was a Jewish man. And in the Jewish society, this Jewish nation, they didn't have their own rule. They weren't autonomous. See, the Jewish nation was under the rule of the Roman Empire at the time. And so the Roman Empire, they would tax the Jewish people. And they would take the money from the Jewish people, and the Jewish people would have to support the Roman Empire. And so Zacchaeus was a tax collector. Not just a tax collector, he was the chief of the tax collectors. And so that meant that Zacchaeus sided with the enemy. The Roman Empire, the overseers, he sided with the enemy to take money from his own people. And so the Jewish people looked at Zacchaeus as scum. They looked at Zacchaeus as the worst of the worst. You are a traitor. You betrayed your own people. You are the chief of sinners. And he wasn't just a tax collector. He was the high-ranking tax collector. And I like to think of Zacchaeus as kind of like a mobster. You know, if you think of like the mafia and like the family of mafia, you know, and they go house to house, and, you know, you got to pay for your protection, or else, you know, the mafia's going to get you. And you see like Zacchaeus, I kind of see him, picture him as sitting in his big old mansion with his pet tiger and his gold chains. And then he's got like his cronies, because he's the chief, and he's got like these cronies, a tax collector, going house to house collecting the taxes. And they would, and you even see it, he says, if I cheated out anybody, I would repay. They were known for cheating people of their tax and making them pay more, threatening them if they didn't, and then pocketing the surplus. So that's how bad on the badness scale Zacchaeus was. He was looked down upon, and he was looked down as a cheat, as a criminal, as a thug. That was Zacchaeus. But Zacchaeus wanted to see Jesus. And he didn't want to see Jesus because he wanted Jesus to change his life. He wanted to see Jesus because Jesus was a superstar at the time. I mean, Jesus is the most famous person in history ever. That's Jesus. And Jesus is coming to his town. And Zacchaeus, this man of like status, he's got to see Jesus. What is this all about? And so he obviously is short in stature, so he climbs up this tree to see Jesus. And then Jesus comes over to Zacchaeus. I mean, just out of the blue. It's completely random. He walks up to the tree and calls him by his name. That's just a miracle, right? He doesn't know Zacchaeus. Looks up in the tree and says, "Zacchaeus, come down, because I'm going to your house. I'm going to your house." And that drove people mad. How could Jesus befriend this guy who cheated us out of our money? He's the enemy. Doesn't Jesus know that he's the enemy? And Jesus went to Zacchaeus' house. And then the next verse, Zacchaeus exclaims, "Look, Lord, here and now I give half or I give half of my possessions to the poor. There's something that happens when Jesus takes Zacchaeus to his house to have lunch with him or whatever they're doing, to Zacchaeus exclaiming, Lord, I give everything away to the poor. I change my whole way of life. See, Jesus gave Zacchaeus something that I don't think many people did. He gave him time. Jesus cared about Zacchaeus. Jesus showed that he cared about Zacchaeus. He was a friend to Zacchaeus. And there was something so powerful in that exchange between Zacchaeus and Jesus, something so powerful that it doesn't even tell us, the Bible doesn't tell us what they talked about. It doesn't tell us why Zacchaeus all of a sudden exclaimed this, but there's something so powerful with Zacchaeus meeting Jesus and having an encounter with Jesus that he changed his entire life. He changed everything about him. This lifelong mafia thug boss who was a ruler, who a chief of tax collectors, could get whatever he wanted, his life was completely changed because of the encounter he had with Jesus. And sometimes when I can read this story, I think that I can identify with Zacchaeus. And I don't know if you can too. I can identify with Zacchaeus because we try to climb this tree of spirituality to see Jesus. Maybe if I just climb a little higher. Maybe if I do just a little bit more. Maybe if I work just a little bit more. Maybe if I'm a more spiritual person, if I go to a church more, if I give more money, maybe I can see Jesus. Maybe I can get God's attention. And Zacchaeus wasn't saved by Jesus because he climbed a tree. That's not what got Jesus' attention. See, Jesus saved Zacchaeus out of grace. Jesus saved Zacchaeus out of grace. It was Jesus who came to Zacchaeus. It was Jesus who called him by name. His encounter with Jesus is what changed his life. Jesus said, hurry down. And Jesus is saying that now, hurry down from that tree of religion that you're trying to climb. Hurry down from that tree of status that you've built. That's not what's going to save you. Because only Jesus' grace can save us. Jesus came to this earth, and then he says, I came to find the lost. See, Jesus came to find the Zacchaeuses. He came to look for those who are lost, those who are trying maybe to climb the tree, trying to save themselves. He came to be a friend of sinners, which means that Jesus came to be a friend to you and to me. Because no matter what that badness scale is, no matter where we think we are on that badness scale, we are all sinners. We've all done something wrong, and we need Jesus. Jesus also saved another tax collector. There's another character in this story. Well, another story. Very similar story. Zacchaeus was a tax collector, but then Jesus came and saved a guy named Matthew. So we're going to read that real quick. Matthew 9, verse 9 says this. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. Follow me, he told him. And Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, sound familiar? Many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. And when the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners? On hearing this, Jesus said, it is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners. See, in the conversation that Jesus has, a very similar story, where Jesus goes to this tax collector, he has dinner with him, and then he's accused of eating, of giving time to sinners. See, in this story, Jesus lumps all of humanity into two groups. The people who think they are righteous and the people who know they are sinners. He lumps all of them. I came to seek, or to the sick need a doctor. That's who I came for. The healthy don't need a doctor. There's the people who think they are religious and the people who know that they are sinners. See, we all need help sometimes, but not all of us want to admit that. At one point in our lives, at some point in our lives, we all need help, but not all of us are willing to admit that. A lot of us are stuck on this, I think that I am a religious person. For most people, it's not their scandalous sins that hinder them from accepting Christ. It's their empty good deeds. It's not like these huge sins that are these ginormous barriers from you to accept Christ. It's your empty good deeds, thinking that we're good when we're not. See, some people, it's obvious that they have problems. Like, they walk in, you're like, that dude, he's got some issues. You know, he needs to straighten some stuff out. He wears his problems on his sleeves. You can tell, hey, that person's got some issues. But what about the average guy? I'm talking about the average Joe who lives on a quiet little cul-de-sac. He cleans his car. He mows his lawn. He provides for his family. You know, he doesn't cheat on his wife. He's a good guy, right? And he could easily say, I'm a good person. I don't need help. That guy over there who did that horrible deed, that's the guy who really needs help. The guy who it's obvious that they have issues, that's the guy who needs help. See, Jesus befriended Zacchaeus and Matthew. He befriended both these guys. But there was this one group of people, and we've talked about these people before, but there's this one group of people who couldn't handle that. In fact, they hated Jesus because he was a friend of these sinners. And these were the Pharisees. And the Pharisees were people who had regulations for everything. You know, they're dressed in the garb. They got, like, the white robes. They've got, like, these headbands with scripture written on it. They've got these long prayer robes that they would carry, prayer beads and stuff. And the Pharisees had regulations and rules for everything. They would follow the 10 Commandments down to the T. And then not only that, they had regulations for how you were supposed to wash your hands. They had regulations for, like, how to strap down your camel. So if you didn't strap down your camel right and shake it good and say that's not going anywhere, you know, then it wasn't right. You had to follow this regulation of how you did things. And the Pharisees lived by these regulations. It drove them. They had all these rules. And in the name of following these rules, in the name of hating sin, the Pharisees, what they ended up doing was they started hating sinners. In the name of, like, being holy and following all these rules, they started hating people. In fact, they measured their level of holiness by how far removed they were from sinful people even. So not only am I going to do what's right, I'm going to remove myself from people who in my eyes are low on the badness scale. I'm going to remove myself from them because I don't even want to be close to them. That was the Pharisees. They were these religious zealots. And that's why they hated Jesus, because he was the opposite of them. He would go in and befriend the worst of the worst, go have lunch with people who they thought were way down on the badness scale. See, Jesus wasn't killed by criminals. Jesus wasn't murdered by a mob. He was murdered by religious people, by these Pharisees. That's who killed Jesus. And before we get too mad at the Pharisees, we need to recognize that all of us, inside of us, have this little Pharisee that wants to get out. We have, like, this little tiny Pharisee in our hearts that's just dying to get out and make himself known. And it's happened to me. I mean, I definitely dealt with this growing up, especially if you've been in church for a while. You deal with this more and more, I feel. And it's happened to me. No sooner do I stop a bad habit than I turn around and condemn the person who's still stuck in that bad habit. Like, what? You didn't finish that yet? You didn't get out of that yet? You haven't overcome that yet? Come on. You know, as soon as we, like, choose a way of living, we expect someone else to live just like that, or else they're not living the way we think they should live. It's this Pharisaicalism, is being a Pharisee. So mentally, we condemn other people's bad deeds because it's easier than dealing with our own. Mentally, we condemn every other person as being bad and the things that they've done as being bad because if we didn't do that, we'd have to deal with our own stuff, our own issues, if we didn't have anyone to compare with. See, sometimes we can find ourselves doing this. This is kind of the system. We make up rules to fit my standard of living. And then I'll judge you by those rules. So I'm going to make up these rules that they fit my standard of living, and I'm going to judge you by those rules. And so if you do those rules, if you follow those rules, you're a good person. But if you break the rules that I've set up for myself, you're a bad person. And then if you have, like, stronger or stricter rules, then you're just a pious legalist who needs to lighten up. You know, this is like the twisted, weird system that we do and that we, like, mentally build up in our lives. That if you don't live the way I live, you're a bad person. And if you live, like, stricter than I live, you're just pious. You just need to lighten up. You just need to chill out. That's what Pharisees did. That's what they do. And there's no freedom in that. See, freedom starts with honesty. freedom in life starts with honesty. And we aren't helping ourselves by defining ourselves as good and others as bad. We need to agree that we all need help and that we all need help together. We are all messed up. All of us are on the bad scale. We've all done things that are wrong. And none of us have it all together. None of us have it all figured out. No one in this room has it figured out. Not even the pastors. Trust me, I know all the pastors. I know myself. We definitely don't have it all figured out. We all need help together. And there's honesty that comes with that. When we're honest with the fact that I need Jesus, that I can act like I got it figured out, like all these Pharisees did. I can act like I'm this super religious, pious person, that I got it all figured out, but in reality, no one does. And that's where freedom comes. Freedom comes when we are honest with ourselves, that we need a friend in Jesus. When we're honest with ourselves that we need Jesus. See, there's a story I talked about. Well, actually, why do we do that? Why do we build up these rules? I think that's a good question to ask. Why do we build up these rules to make ourselves feel better and to declassify or put other people in a different class? And I think this is why we do it. Because when we build up those rules, we distance ourselves from bad people. When we build up those rules, we distance ourselves from people that we would consider low on the badness scale. Because if I separate from them, if I separate from people that I deem as bad, then I don't have to get my hands dirty. I don't have to feel their pain. I don't have to get involved with the stuff that they're involved with. If I separate myself from them, I can remove myself from that scenario. I don't have to feel compassion towards them. I don't have to try to understand where they're coming from. I don't have to try to understand their story. Or take it a step further, and this is where it gets real twisted. If I remove myself from the low of the bad people, the people that are low on that badness scale, I can celebrate when they get what's coming to them. I can start celebrating when they get what's coming to them because, after all, they deserved it, didn't they? They deserve it. They're getting what's coming to them. And when we remove ourselves by these rules from loving and entering into those people, from realizing those people need Jesus as much as you need Jesus, that there is no badness scale, we can enter into those lives like Jesus did, entering into the life of Zacchaeus, befriending Matthew, getting to know their story, showing them compassion and love. And I'm not saying we should abolish judgment in society. That's not what I'm saying. There's definitely has to be judgment. There has to be law and order. But I am saying we should abolish judgmentalism. Judgmentalism has no place in the life of a Christian. We're not called to be judgmental, to condemn others. That's not what we're called to do. See, rules are not a sign of our spirituality. If anything, they're a sign of our tendency to drift away from God. That we need these rules because naturally we want to go away from who God is. And you don't have to be good to be a friend of Jesus. You just have to be honest. You just have to be honest. And there's a story we talked about a couple weeks ago. And it was the story of Jesus and the woman caught in adultery. And in this story, this woman is thrown at the feet of Jesus. And there's all these Pharisees, these religious zealots that want to kill her. They want to kill her. They have all these stones in their hands because she committed adultery and they caught her. So because she was caught, she was condemned, she was guilty. In their eyes, she's way down on the badness scale. And so they bring her before Jesus and they say, Jesus, she's guilty. What are you going to do? And what does Jesus say? He says, those who are without sin cast the first stone. This is an interesting story because Jesus showed compassion, empathy, and gave that person hope. And we often are harsher judges than God himself. We condemn people that God doesn't even condemn. The evil we see gets us angry, and we condemn those people that we deem more evil than ourselves. We think that there's no hope for them, And Jesus is saying, no, I died for them too. No, there's hope. There's hope for that person too. So we ask the question, can a rapist be saved? Can a pedophile be saved? Can a human trafficker be saved? A serial killer? Can they be saved? Yes. See, if justice must be served, then we are all in trouble because we all have sinned. And Jesus was the advocate for that woman caught in adultery. He showed her compassion and love and humility and empathy. Our enemy is not bad people. Our enemy is the badness itself. Our enemy is evil and the evil one. And when it comes to sin, the only one who has the right to condemn is Jesus. And guess what? He refused. He refused. He didn't condemn her. He didn't condemn Zacchaeus. He didn't condemn Matthew. He cared about them. And he befriended them. See, sometimes it's not just bad people we write off, but we can swing that pendulum all the way to the other way and say, well, man, you should know the things that I've done. There's no way that God could love me. I'm the worst of the worst, and we start condemning ourselves for the actions we've done. And in both those scenarios, both those cases, they're wrong because we focus on the wrong thing. We're focusing on the rules. We're focusing on the system of rules instead of on relationship with Jesus. Instead of knowing Jesus, experiencing Jesus, the focus gets off of Jesus. He's the focus. And I think in life we can find ourselves in one of these 4 stages. And this is what I'm going to close with. And as we talk about these 4 stages, I want you to identify yourself. Try to think, where do I fit in? Which stage of these stages do I fit with my ideology? Number 1 says, I'm a good person, and I'm justified in criticizing bad people. It's the first stage. I'm a good person, and I justify myself so I can criticize bad people. The second stage is, I'm a good person, but I should show compassion to bad people. I think that's where a lot of people end up. A lot of people, we see a lot of social things that are built around this stage right here. Well, I'm a good person, but we need to show compassion towards the bad people. The third stage is this. I'm a sinner who needs just as much help as the next guy. I'm a sinner who needs just as much help as the next guy. And the fourth stage is this. I am loved by Jesus, just as I am, and so is everyone else. I'm loved by Jesus just as I am, and so is everyone else. That there is no badness scale, that we all need Jesus. Every single person in this world needs to befriend Jesus. So how can we be a friend like Jesus was a friend? When we can get the right perspective on ourselves and our own sin. The right perspective on ourselves and the fact that Jesus befriended me because I'm a sinner. Jesus can befriend anyone. So I pray that if you're a little higher on that stage 1, where you're stuck with that badness scale, where I'm mostly good and other people are mostly bad so I can judge them, I pray that you will ask God to change your heart. My prayer is that you will ask God to start loving like Jesus loved. That's the goal for this week. I pray that as we can work on that, me, myself included, that when I tend to think, man, that's the worst of the worst, I can think Jesus loves them just like he loves me. That I'm a sinner just like that person's a sinner. Jesus had to die for him just like Jesus had to die for me. The same blood that saved me is the same blood that can save him. Let's be friends like Jesus was a friend. Let's close with a word of prayer. God, we thank you for the story of Zacchaeus and Matthew. And we thank you that you were a friend to me. I thank you that you're a friend to everyone who's willing. That everyone who's willing to turn to you, you will come down and accept them. God, thank you. Thank you for not having a badness scale. I pray that we can love like you love, that we can show compassion towards a hurting world like you showed compassion. God, I pray that we will resist the urge to be Pharisees, to start condemning, to start justifying our condemnation. God, I pray that we will be loving, that we will be compassionate and empathetic, that we will be ambassadors of how you loved. I pray that over my life, and I pray that over the life of everyone in this room, that we can start loving people like you loved us. I pray this in your name. Amen.